How's it going, my G's? Hope you're all doing well. Just enjoying my coffee on this Monday morning. Yeah, so I thought I'd do a little video on layering snares, or the dark art of layering snares, or the dark farts of yeah. Um, Basically, this is a track that I'm currently working on, and I've just stripped away all of the good parts and left you with the terrible bits. No, I've just left the drums. And I just got a few pieces of advice which might be some gems for some of you with layering snares. Some of you may already be really good at it, and if you are, I suggest that you still watch the video because there'll be lots of other unrelated jokes that you can enjoy. Well, maybe. I mean, it's quite early. I'm not sure if I'm that up for jokes yet, but let's see. What I've got with my snare to layer it is I've got one main snare hit, and then I literally have got like four other random little pieces of noise. And if we take a look at span, and let's almost take a moment to just applaud the frequency spectrum as a whole, because isn't it a beautiful thing? And I can't even find it. There it is. Span. Beautiful. Look at that. Let's take a look at the snare, and I'm going to tell you what I like about a snare. And I'm gonna make it into stereo EQ. Now what I mean, this is a little bit of a tighter poppy snare, but there's two things that I look for in a snare, which you may already be able to guess, and that is, if I mute this, the punchy aspect of the snare, the sine wave, and this is always my main one. And this is normally the one that's got the transient on it already. And then the rest of the high end is like filling out the background of the snare, filling out the depth of the snare, giving it a bit of flavour, giving it a bit of character, giving it a bit of a caramel finish. And all my sort of four other layers, or how many it was, four or five. I think my how many is it? Let's have a look. Four. Okay, so I've got one main snare and then four layers. And all the four layers are literally just filling out this top bit and giving the character and just like squeezing out all the I want to think of a different way to say it. Like a wall of sound is what I'm trying to create. I'm trying to create that wall of sound in the high end by like having all these layers that fill in all the little holes. Yeah, so the main snare, I made that in Vital, and I bounced it out because Vital's being a bit weird and like glitchy with me at the moment. I don't know why, so I've had to sort of bounce it out. So it's my A1 snapper snare from like a previous Vital pack, and it's just very tight and short and quick, and no frills. And then I sort of use this as the basis point to get the volume of the snare right in the mix. So I've turned it down 2.7, and by listening with all the other layers turned off, you know, this transient on its own, this just single synth snare I'm using that to balance the level of the whole snare, like without any of the other layers added, if that makes any sense at all. Because it's like the low part and the punch, it's sort of like that's the part that's important to get the volume like right and balance the mix right with. So I've sort of just balanced everything with that, and then these extra layers are all just going to be like literally, like I said, like a caramel kind of finish. So sorry, I don't actually like caramel. Actually, I had some. Shout out to my student Ian from Tokyo, because he bought me some popcorn from, like craft popcorn, and there was a caramel one which I had last night actually, which was really, really interesting. I wouldn't say interesting, just very naughty and sweet. Anyway, so you can see I've got a bunch of different random D&B snares, but this is the part I want to talk about with the art of layering the snare. I found it's definitely important to EQ out the low end of your layers, but the most important thing is shaping the transient on them. And you can actually get the Kilohertz transient shaper for free now. Like, they've released all of their new Shizer for free. Not new Shizer, their old Shizer is all free. So definitely go ahead and grab that. And look what I'm doing. I'm transient shaping all of the layers, just turning the attack down on all of them. And I literally, it's so boring, I've done it on every one. And on this clap snare, I've got so excited with it, I've even done it twice. And you might think, well, why didn't you do it 36 and then why have you done it at 36 again? And why didn't you just do it at 72? Quick maths. Yeah, well, the reason why is because I don't know, all right? I don't know. But I just copied it over because I thought it wasn't enough, so let's copy it over. Transient shaping on top of transient shaping. I mean, that's how the world was built. So that's exciting. So if we add in one layer at a time, let's listen to them. It's the tail end of a snare sample. You can tell it's like just the second half of it. This one here, it's a nice clappy click, but if I take the transients off, that is super loud, super horrible and disgustingly loud. And we don't like that at all. We really don't like that. So now I've got that character of the end of it, but I've taken the transient out completely and I had to use 2 because it was so insane. Then this snare noise here, this is literally very just white noisy. But, oh, again, that's disgusting with that transient in there. It's so sharp. I don't want any transients, in case you haven't noticed. Apart from, obviously, on the main snare. There's no transient shaper on that one. So, the last layer is another clap. This is a more stereo clap, adding, a bit of width and depth to the top of the sound, which is very exciting because we like to have a bit of a stereo character to our snare, and claps and clicks are a great way to do that because they're sort of a natural stereo sample a lot of the time. And yeah, so this attack down -21 because yeah, you could almost get away with leaving it in, but I wanted to just soften it because when in doubt, soften things out with your layers. That's a new catchphrase. Shout out to Princess Leia, not the young one in Star Wars. She's annoying. Let Obi-Wan do his job and let the main snare. This is the Obi-Wan snare, right? So Obi-Wan snare, and then all of these are the Princess Leias that follow him around. Yeah, but make sure you transient shape them all. So now you can hear all of them together. Oh, and there's a little ghost one here, but we'll mute that for a minute. But you can hear that transient of the main one. It's still sort of cutting through as the main sound, and all the others sort of faded in just after it. But you do hear all the other layers separately, so they all fit in to the same snare. And although the transient's been taken out, it's the little tails and the little extra stereo information and the little extra harmonics and the little extra read all about it. They all add up to create, the mega snare. And you can do this with anything. You can do this with any layers, and this is how you can create your own snare. But what's important is the transients. I can't stress that enough. A lot of these layers, I didn't actually have to EQ because they didn't have. I mean, let's check this one out. Does that have? It's got a little bit of rumble there, but a lot of these layers that I've selected and the noise and all this and the little claps, this clap here I haven't EQ'd. They're kind of just it's better when the layers just are already those kind of layers that only have high end in anyway, so you don't need to EQ them. But a couple of them, I think this snare layer, I think I had to EQ it a bit. Because here it's really obviously got a sine wave in the low end, and we only want one snare to have that. So in this case, I still wanted that tail and the character of that layer, but I did have to take out the sine wave there. But yeah, like I said, on these other ones, these other little layers, they didn't really have. They're like clicks and claps and noises, so they're not an actual snare, so I didn't need to take out the actual low sine wave of the snare, only on this one. Anyway, I'm rambling a bit now, but those are the Obi-Wan snare collection, available now on artifact.com/Star Wars merch. No, that's a lie, but hang on. Sorry, just drinking my coffee before it goes cold and I have to reheat it in the microwave again like I do 70 times throughout the day normally. Anyway, that goes into a snare group. And again, this time I've transient shaped it by just turning down the sustain. So I'm cutting down all the tails. Shout out to Tails from Sonic and Tails. But yeah, this is like basically one way that I like to gel the snare together is to shape the tails of everything that I've done on the same transient shaper. And that's actually a way that you can sort of marinate everything together, marry everything together. So, you know, it's quite long actually, isn't it? It's quite a long tail on there. So if I sort of shorten that, I'm shortening all these long tail layers together, and in a sense it kind of, you know, makes it more sound like one cohesive snare. And then I just took out the useless low end of the snare really here, just to ensure there's no rumble in the sine wave area, in the sub area, so I don't really need to sidechain it to the sub at that point. Camel crushed it, and then yeah, now we've kind of blended this all together and smashed all these layers together, then we can control the whole volume of the snare afterwards. And yeah, maybe we'll turn it down a bit to make it a little bit less powerful than the kick, so the kick has a bit more punch than the snare. That would be exciting for the kick drum, you know, give him a little shout out. And yeah, that is how I go about layering my snares, and it's always different sound, but the techniques remain the same. We're having the Obi-Wan, you know, with the transient in, and the princess layers following him around, but very softly, very, you know, very soft at the start. And those kind of nice layers that clicks and clacks and plicks and plops and snipes and snips and snaps and noises that have just high end in are quite very better, you know, sir, because they don't need to be EQ'd even, and the more you need to EQ a sound, the more it's the wrong one. So just use clever sounds instead, right? And apart from this one, I wanted to use this layer, so I did have to EQ that one. Yeah, and that's all there is to it really. There's not much more than that. You don't need to like distort it really, because it's so loud of a transient anyway. You're only just going to ruin it. You don't really need to compress it, or you could slightly, but you've got more control yourself if you just like volume adjust all the layers like I have here. You know, I've mixed them all in on the volume. So that's like more detailed control, just doing it yourself rather than compressing it all. And then, yeah, like you don't really need to do anything else on the group. It's really much more beneficial when you layer it right. And yeah, like pay attention to this Obi-Wan concept, you know, let him lead the way and then let the others follow. And yeah, I don't know if anyone else on YouTube will have explained snare layering as well as I just did. So if you appreciate that, join Patreon, sign up for my mentorship. Don't do anything I wouldn't do now, would you?